Hello, and welcome to our 10 Saints podcast series, part two, with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. And I'm going to be joined in just a second by our board president, Mr. Mickey Kelly. And the topic for this Families in Crisis podcast today is going to be Saint Dymphna. Now, Saint Dymphna is a saint that is for anyone who is going through any type of psychological, mental, emotional, mental issues. And many a person who has gone through challenges, family crisis, has interceded to Saint Dymphna. So I want to just bring you on, Mickey, and give us any thoughts that you have about Saint Dymphna.
Yes, hi, Anne. It's great to be on here once again. Well, Saint Dipna, I honestly think that, if we have, honestly, I think this is a great saint for everybody to turn to, especially with there has been a surge in quite a bit of mental illness, especially as we kind of put the recent COVID pandemic, in rear view. And evidently enough, I think we seem to forget that this is another one of those Irish saints that existed, in the early, uh, the early first millennium. And let's face it, this is a great saint to have, especially those who struggle from mental illness that are brought about from, family trauma. Especially like if there's like fights or whatever, or even those are like, you know, facing depression, as a result of maybe broken homes. This is a great saint to really turn to during those times.
Yeah, she certainly is. And I know years ago, a long, long time ago, when my family was going through some specific things, and someone had recommended to me to intercede to her. There's all kinds of novenas for her too. And if some of you need to know the spelling of her name, it's Dymphna, and she was born in Ireland. Now, I would like to read her bio. It is a couple paragraphs long, but I do think it's important for us to get like that correct information. So I will read her bio. And this one is from Catholic.org, in case you all want to just go to that website. And it says that her feast day is May 15th. She is the patron of those suffering from nervous and mental afflictions. She was born in the 7th century. She died in the 7th century, and she was canonized in 620. And the bio goes on to say, like I said, it is a couple paragraphs, so bear with me. It said she was born in Ireland sometime in the 7th century to a pagan father and a devout Christian mother. When she was 14, she consecrated herself to Christ and took a vow of chastity. Soon afterward, her mother died, and her father, who had loved his wife deeply, began to suffer a rapid deterioration of his mental stability. So unhinged was Dymphna's father, Damon, that the king's counselor suggested that he remarry. Though he was still grieving his wife, he agreed to remarry if a woman was as beautiful as she could be found. Damon sent messengers throughout his town and other lands to find women of noble birth who resembled his wife and would be willing to marry him. But when none could be found, his evil advisors whispered sinful suggestions to many of his own daughter. So twisted were Damon's thoughts that he recognized only his wife when he looked upon Dymphna. So he consented to the arrangement. When she heard of her father's misguided plot, Dymphna fled to her castle with her confessor, a priest named Jerebren, forgive me, two trusted servants, and the king's fool. The group sailed toward what is now called Belgium and hid in the town of Geel. Though it becomes uncertain what exactly happened next, the best known version claims the group settled in Geel, where Dymphna built a hospital for the poor and sick. But in using her wealth, her father was unable to discover her location. When Damon found his daughter was in Belgium, he traveled to Geel and captured them. He ordered the priest's head to be separated from his body and attempted to convince Dymphna to return to Ireland to marry him. When Dymphna refused, Damon became enraged and drew his sword. He struck Dymphna's head from her shoulders and left her there. When she died, Dymphna was only 15 years old. After her father left Geel, the residents collected both Dymphna and Jeroboam's remains and laid them to rest in the cave. In defense of her purity, Dymphna received the crown of martyrdom around the year of 620 and became known as the Lily of the Ire. In 1349, a church honoring Saint Dymphna was built in Geel, and by 1480, so many pilgrims were arriving in need of treatment for mental ills that the church was expanded. The expanded sanctuary was eventually overflowing again, leaving the townspeople to accept them into their homes, which began a tradition of care for the mentally ill. So that continues to this day. Again, sorry, this is long. I just want to make sure I get it all in. Unfortunately, the 15th century uh, in the 15th century, the original Dymphna church in Geel burned to the ground, and the magnificent church of St. Dymphna was erected and consecrated in 1532, where it still stands above the location of her body where it was originally buried. Many miracles have been proven to take place at her shrine in the church erected in honor of her remains. Where is placed a silver reliquary in the church. Some of her remains can also be found in the shrine of St. Dymphna in the United States. The priest who had helped Dymphna was also sainted and remains removed to Xanten, Germany. The United States National Shrine of St. Dymphna is at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Ohio, and St. Dymphna's Special School can be found in Ballina County, Mayo, Republic of Ireland. Saint Dymphna is the patroness of those suffering nervous and mental afflictions, as well as the victims of incest. Traditionally, Saint Dymphna is often portrayed with a crown on her head, dressed in royal robes and holding a sword. In modern art, Saint Dymphna is showing holding the sword, which symbolizes her martyrdom. Quite awkwardly, she's often holding a lamp, while some holy cards feature her wearing green and white, holding a book and white lilies. And then there's a prayer. I do think I should read the prayer. The prayer says, "Hear us, O God, our Savior, as we honor Saint Dymphna, patron of those afflicted with mental and emotional illness. Help us to be inspired by her example and comforted by her merciful help. Amen." Now, again, I'm sorry that was a little bit long, but I did want to read it because it gives those details. Can you imagine that her father wanted to, basically rape her and make her his wife, and and she wanted to escape. And so she was martyred in a way. If you think about it, she was martyred. So let me bring Mickey on and we can discuss her life together and any thoughts that you have on that bio.
Yeah, and I was just like listening to what you were saying in regards to the bio, and wow, it's really amazing, especially that that this kind of like it kind of correlates, Saint Maria Goretti, because like Divna, is like a saint, is a saint, is the Irish, is the Irish version of Saint Maria Goretti, so to speak, and honestly, being martyred for purity, that I mean, she's an apostle of purity. Having a pure heart and having, pure relationships. I mean, that to me is that, someone we can look to. And let's face it, we have like, some people may think like there's problems between like this, like the husband and the wife in marriages, but how often do we hear about stories of how the parent, you know, abuses the child? And it's very alarming and scary. It's very alarming to see that. And there has been a rise in those in, recent years. And I think that's something that we have to hopefully we can do a better job of and maybe try to turn that around. But I think if there's one thing we take away from Saint Difna and looking at her at how she is, the Irish version of Saint Maria Goretti, even long before she existed, I think one of the things we have to understand is that, she set the standard what purity is. And we have to carry on that tradition.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. And I think there were some facts about her when I'm reading the bio, some facts that I didn't know, but I love how you said that she is the Irish saint similar to Saint Maria Goretti. I mean, we hear a lot in the Catholic Church. I know in our own archdiocese, we hear an awful lot about Saint Maria Goretti. And even there's a church nearby me where I live in the suburbs out in the Philadelphia area. There's a church close by, which is Saint Maria Goretti. And there's also one in Philadelphia. And they're all over the place too. And she's also one that you should definitely read her bio. In fact, we should do a podcast on Saint Maria Goretti too. I don't think we have yet, but isn't it true that there's so much to learn when we listen to that bio? I mean, maybe you who are watching this, your family in crisis, maybe someone in your family was abused by a family member. Maybe it was you. Maybe an adult abused a younger person, which is terrible. I mean, any type of abuse, any type of trauma that needs prayer, that needs help. And I also, as I say on every single podcast that we have, is please don't forget to make that appointment with us for the free pastoral consultation, because that's what we do with our Mercedary and Friars, is that we offer the 1 hour free consultation. You can have as many as you like, because maybe you need to talk about some of these things. But I definitely think that it's a worthy to say a novena to Saint Dymphna. And remember, it said at the beginning of the article that her feast day is on May 15th, I believe. Let me just confirm that. But yes. And so anybody, it's my understanding that anybody who has suffered some kind of psychological, mental, emotional problems, issues, which families in crisis certainly have. I mean, isn't she a wonderful saint to intercede to? Because I don't know about you, Mickey, but I think there's an awful lot of people who are going through challenges of their emotional well-being. Don't you think so? I mean, let's talk a little bit about that and how Saint Dymphna might be able to help them. Bring you right on here in a second, Mickey. Excuse me. Okay, he's coming on, but it's so true though, isn't it? I mean, there's so many people who could use the intercession of her, because don't you believe that I think that mental, psychological challenges and problems that people have are something that really affects so many families.
And I agree with you. Yes. I mean, I just alluded to a moment ago that we do see a lot of people who are struggling, mentally. Even my cat agrees. I mean, he kind of popped in a little bit. You saw him barely, of course. But yes. And as a matter of fact, I think now they're saying that there could be some family history associated with it. And I think we have to be very careful. In fact, I remember having a discussion with my family about this, because we used to talk about like some of the some of the big names in my community, like growing up, especially like, my parents knew who this person was. My dad knew it for the most part. My dad knew who was who, and because he hung out with a lot of people like on the corners, like back in the day and what have you. He worked with a lot of people too. One of the things that One of the things that we have to understand is that um, sometimes the dads can, if they having like mental problems, it's likely it's going to be like passed on to the kids. So, say for example, if like the parent, commits suicide, it's likely the kids are going to do it. Mostly the sons, for the most part. Every once in a while, maybe the daughters too, and that's scary. And I mean, I don't mean to throw it out there, but there has been some research, and I have an example of it in like some of my neighbors, like that my parents knew growing up. They had that problem where I think all but one son took their life, basically due to some kind of like family history of like mental illness, and it's very scary too. One of the things that also I think as we look at too is that well, first of all, recently there was a new line you can call if you're struggling with mental illnesses. I mean, I don't want to steer away from the Catholic aspect of this, but we do want to act like, if you're watching this and if you're struggling with some mental issues, first of all, do pray to Saint Dymphna. Do ask for her intercession for sure. The other thing to keep in mind too is you may want to also consider calling the 811 line. So it's almost like 911, but you have to go back to it. I mean, I think we'll check that later. But anyhow, just call that new line. It's anonymous, and just reach out to them if you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, or someone that is struggling with mental illnesses. It's I think it's going to make a difference between life and death. Believe me. And as far as I'm hearing, I think there have been lives that have been saved because of this new 3-digit number line that I am sure is going to pay dividends. So don't be afraid to reach out to anybody, even a trusted friend too. It's going to make the difference between living another day or passing on your hurts and everything to those that you love.
Yes, maybe Mickey, you can confirm that by the end of the podcast to be great about that number. That is good to know, because there are certainly so many people in this world who are going through those psychological, mental, emotional challenges where they're even tempted to to do something like that. So that, of course, that is a major, major trauma. Maybe even someone who's watching this podcast for families in crisis, you are someone you know is affected by that, by someone who has taken their own life. So we do invite you to get the help that you need. Mickey mentioned that phone number that you can call. Of course, there's the suicide. Yes, thank you. 988. So we'll confirm that again. But yeah, these are all really important facts and topics for you. I just think that it's good that we have these podcasts to talk about these saints that you can intercede to, because often, sometimes within the foundation, me as executive director, people do ask the question, like, who can I intercede to for this problem? And I think for those people who are watching that have any type of mental or psychological issue, on a simple Google search from hallow.com, it says that St. Dymphna is the patron saint of the mentally ill, victims of incest and domestic abuse, and runaways. She inspires us to be resilient against the evils of the world, and that God will never forsake us despite any evil we might suffer. She was born in Ireland in the 7th century to a pagan king and a Christian mother. So just to reiterate again, it says that she's the patron saint of mentally ill victims, incest, and domestic abuse, too. I mean, let's talk about that, because there are a lot of people who are affected by domestic abuse. And I know that in the foundation, we have had people who are reaching out to us. So I don't know, Mickey, if you want to have any words on that. Don't you think St. Dymphna is a great saint for those who are also affected by domestic abuse?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, let's look at it this way, and I think many of us can understand, 'cause I think domestic abuse is it's it's sad, and I don't think anybody wants to experience it at all. I mean, I hear about it a lot, and it's not just like, let's say like the boyfriend girlfriend kind of thing. But think about it too, like with the parent and child that has. I mean, how often has that happened too? And we do. I mean, Saint Dymphna. I mean, she's been through it all. Believe me, but believe us. I mean, look at it, and a very powerful intercessor to help you, break away from that cycle of abuse. Especially if it's domestic, because the last thing we like anybody wants to do is to continue through this cycle. You know, you're loved, and then this happens, and so on and so forth. And how often too do we see women that are like feel like they're trapped in a lot of these, broken relationships that they figure that there's no way out. And it's
Yes.
sad. And we do need, and thank God for or like groups like Generation Life and the Culture Project. They're trying to help us understand that what real love is, let alone the fact what constitutes a God loving relationship compared to something out of like reality TV, which most of it's garbage. Let's face it.
Yeah. Yeah, these are all great points. Thank you so much. And I just think we need to always be aware of the different areas of each saint, like say Saint Raymond Nonnatus. People ask me as executive director, like, who is he best for intercession? And of course, those expectant mothers, families in crisis, those affected by divorce, separation. But the other one is those who are falsely accused. Now, that's a side topic because this podcast is not about St. Raymond Nonnatus. We did do our very first one we did on St. Raymond Nonnatus, but I also want to mention that patronage to St. Dymphna is that those with epilepsy, I said incest victims, those who have lost their parents, mental health caregivers and professionals, those suffering from emotional, nervous, and mental illnesses, rape and sexual abuse victims, and runaways. And I am reading this, by the way, from this CatholicSaintsMedal.com. It's saintsmedal.com. And it says, because of the miraculous healings and events that have taken place at her burial site, in addition to those reported by those who seek her intercession and prayer, St. Dymphna is popular saint among those whose lives have been affected by mental health challenges. This not only includes a mental illness, but their family and friends and treatment professionals as well. Isn't it interesting? It mentions the treatment professionals too. I mean, and so in other words, we need to pray for those doctors, nurses, psychologists, therapists. You can intercede to them too, to St. Dymphna. What do you think about that, Mickey? I think that's a great one to just mention all of those ways that you can intercede to Saint Dymphna, right? Because don't our mental health professionals and our first responders, they definitely need to be prayed for too.
And I agree with you. Yes, I mean, especially like counselors, like especially mental health counselor, even psychologists, like that they're practically on the front lines, helping people with mental issues. Even paramedics too. I mean, well, paramedics too. They do tend, to some mental crisis as well, and especially things that are that affect the brain, and they do need to pray to her as well. And let's face it, I mean, like I think some people don't. I feel like some people are scared to seek help because they're afraid to be ashamed. But I mean, let's face it, like they're here to help you. They're here to help you correct the problems that if a nurse or a doctor can't, you know, you know, fix, fix. You know, we have a doctor that's for here, and we do need to seek that help now before it can escalate to something bad.
Yes. I mean, I think that's so true. And, I'm really glad I found that one because honestly, Mickey, I don't think I would have known that we can intercede for the psychologists, therapists, doctors, first responders too. I mean, those people who pick up the calls for, for those who are maybe contemplating ending their lives. So, I mean, let's all do that. I'm just want to invite people who are watching this podcast to please do intercede to Saint Dymphna for these areas of crisis, right? And just an invitation to all of you. And like I said, I know I do this all the time on the podcast, but I can't say it enough is make sure that you check out all of the resources that we have on our website for those who are affected by divorce and separation, for families in crisis. We have prayer, priestly consultation, podcasts and videos and programs and events, and it's all on our website. We always have constantly have new things that are going on and ways that we can help you and your family. So I want to bring Mickey back on. Mickey, I don't know, did you have any final words on Saint Dymphna before we end? Because I do think she is a beautiful saint for us to think about and intercede to, especially those who are really and truly affected by all of these crises and different emotional problems and issues.
And to be quite honest, I'm just gonna say that pray for her intercession, especially if you're anxious, if you're going through depression, if you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, pray to her, but also seek help too, you know, and also reach out to a trusted person. It's gonna make a difference between living to see another day and passing on your problem, like your sorrows, your pains to loved ones that care about you.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the purpose of these podcasts, I mean, by the way, I should mention like we're doing the 10 Saints Part 2 series, but we already did a whole series of 10, didn't we, Mickey? We did the whole part 1 where we worked on we talked about 10 saints to start and now we're in the middle of this one for part 2 of the saints. So I just want to invite all of you go back and listen to them, share them with your friends. I mean, one of the best ways that you can help us as a foundation is to share our videos with others. I do email blasts, and I think email blasts are great because they really get the word out to a lot of people. So if you can do an email blast, put us on your website, let your archdiocese, your diocese know. Mickey, did you have any final words before we end?
Um, the first thing I could say is don't forget to reach out to us if you ever need help. Continue to pray to the saints, especially those that are patron saints of those with mental illnesses, just like our episode's example. And also pray to her for purity too. I mean, honestly, if Saint Dymphna, Saint Maria Goretti, and a slew of others were alive today, they could probably, you know, establish a sorority group for pure hearts. Like especially if they're like on a college campus too. So, what we like. I mean, the Catholic Church is so rich with many people like to pray to, especially for intercessions, and those that do not have the title of sainthood yet, but it's gonna happen sooner or later.
That's right. Mickey, thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see all of you here next month for our 10 Saints Part 2 series. Don't forget to subscribe to the Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel. We would love for you to do that. God bless you all, and we will see you next month. The St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith was founded in 2015 by the Mercedarian Religious Order with a mission to make pastoral outreach to families in crisis. The friars came together after attending the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia with hopes of creating a foundation which could help those families and individuals who have faced tough times and need to know that the church cares and is there to help. Since that time when we were founded, the foundation has helped hundreds of families by offering prayer, priestly consultations, podcasts and videos, and programs and events. Whether it is something to do with divorce or separation, trauma, job loss, loss of a loved one, relationship issues, or other crisis, the foundation has seen lives transformed through the services we provide. Pope Francis has referred to our world as a field hospital, where there are a great deal of individuals and families who feel abandoned and they need the special outreach of those who truly care and wish to show the face of God to others. As a foundation, that is what we do every day, and we're grateful to people like you who help to make a difference for families in crisis. Please pray for us and for our mission. Would you consider a one-time or recurring gift? Please go to nonnatus.org to donate. Thank you sincerely from all of us at the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith.